So yeah, I did it. I figured Prism out. The answer is... Oh man, I'm so excited to start playing Prism again. This is gonna be great! Ravages for 7?
Pop it.
Alright. I guess in that case, I'll use my Halo and put a Herald into my soul. That's going to let me grab a Figment from my deck, make a Spectral Shield, and I'll use my Rapture to transform it.
Vincent trigger. Play Envelop. Pay the life. Phantom. Does that eat your angel?
Yup. Alright. We had some minor setbacks there. But we have the tools to fix this. I know. We'll lean into auras instead. That'll solve some of these problems. Triumph for 9?
No go again? I'll block.
Tunic, kill your aura, pass.
Alright, well, couldn't get anything going there. I know. Everyone keeps talking about this soul food card being great in the deck. Let's try that out. That'll solve these problems. I'll play a soul food, putting 1, 2, 3 heralds in my soul, grabbing a Figment of Ravages, a Figment of Protection making a Spectral Shield, and a Figment of Erudition, which I'll flip using my Empyrean Rapture, giving me a Ponder token, and letting me draw a card at the end of my turn. Your move, Duelist.
Rake, pitch, furnace, make 3 ash wings. 1 go again.
Yep, that's pretty much my experience so far with Prism. Today, I'd like to give you guys my thoughts on Prism after playing it for over a month now. I'm going to talk about the good with the deck, the bad with the deck, and I'm going to end the video by giving you guys my final verdict on my thoughts so far with Prism. First, let's talk about what I've been trying with the deck over the past month or so. I started off with Numenaris and a more angel-focused build. I really wanted to spend some time playing with the new cards, understand how they interact with each other, what's good and bad with them. I could have just jumped right into auras, as that's like kind of where I want to go with the deck no matter what, as that's like my favorite play style in the game. But I wanted to give angels a fair shake. I then moved on to work on more of like a hybrid style of, I have auras in the deck, but it's not the main focus. It just gives me another angle of attack versus some decks that might be weaker into auras, such as Guardian and other decks like that. So in this scenario, I was Iris with a small aura package. I then worked on full auras, just nope, we're all in on this game plan. I spent a little bit of time on Refraction. I didn't really like it very much. I felt like against some decks, I really missed the go again on my auras, where if my opponent just picked off my auras, I couldn't use all the cards in my hand. But I think there are some matchups where it is better than Iris. It's just, I didn't play any of those, and it could be a sideboard thing. I messed around quite a bit with Soul Food. I'm sure if you guys were in stream, you saw me struggling to use that card. And I spent some time playing more of a defensive style of Prism, kind of like a Dozer Tank Prism almost, where we're just trying to play for a long game where we run our opponent out of threats. Out of these, I really liked hybrid aura style, and some matchups I really liked Numenaris. Let's start on a high note. Let's talk about what's good with the deck. First of all, the value is insane on some of your cards. If you sat down and told me, hey Pheano, would you like to trade your life points for armor value? Say less. Of course I would. Armor value is so much better than raw life total if it's a 1-to-1 exchange. And in some of the matchups, that's kind of essentially what you're doing with Ward and starting with a lower life total. You're kind of making this trade-off of, I'm gonna have this armor value for later. Now, it doesn't always play out that way. Being able to kind of choose how you're going to use this armor value to stop on hits is very valuable in some matchups. It lets you kind of either stop on hits or leverage saying, hey, I'm going to choose to block with less cards on this round because I have this extra armor value on board, so I can keep more respectable hand size on a round that I want to, where on other rounds I can give up my hand and block. And that can be pretty important in some specific situations where, like, you know, my 2-card hand is very good or my 3-card hand is very good, but given the threat presented, I need to block with 3 cards. Well, because I have this ward in play, I don't have to make that decision. I can block in a more beneficial way to myself. Getting back to the value, though, it is insane. I think Prism might have the best 2-card hands in the entire game now. You can get some 2-card hands that can go as high as almost 15 value. What? That is nuts. Now, how are we getting this kind of value? We play a Herald. The Herald, if it's a red, is coming in for 7. Then we have the on-hit that this Herald might have. We're not going to talk about that right now. It could have value from the on-hit, though. Then it goes to Soul. We get a Figment into play. The Figment might also give us some sort of trigger we care about. And then we use our chest piece to flip the Figment, gaining us 4 life. We have a 2-card 7 that gains us 4 life. That's 11 value off of 2 cards. We are starting at a life deficit, so it's not as insane as it could be, but that's a lot of value. And then when you take into account the triggers that you can get too, you know, a Ponder token from your edition, which can have fluctuating value and how much that is. If we say a full card is worth 3, then, you know, that's really good. It might not be. This is why sometimes I like playing Crown of Providence in the deck, so no matter what, I can get a full card worth of value out of this, even if I arsenal a doo-doo card. And then the hit trigger from our Herald, it can be worth 0, it could be worth 1 if we get a Spectral Shield or an Arcane Damage or something like that. When we have all this together, that's ridiculous value. I don't think any deck can even come close to the 2-card value. You think about what made Icelander so good, and it was a lot of those mid-rangey hands, like, I'm gonna block or play my arsenal and block a little bit, and then I'm gonna throw a 2-card 8 at you. You're just winning the turn cycle every time by doing that kind of play, unless your opponent does some crazy shit. Now, in the case of Icelander, she had disruption, so she could stop her opponent from doing crazy shit and say, you have to play my game plan. We don't have access to that kind of ability necessarily all the time in Prism, outside of like Arclight Sentinel and sometimes Triumph Figment. But another great thing about the deck is you have multiple different distinct game plans, such as auras, angels, heralds. You can play more defensive, you can play more offensive. You have a lot of choices in how you want to play the deck, and I think there's a lot of value in that. So, the bad. Let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. You start at 32 life. It sometimes doesn't matter how much value your 2-card hand is when you start with 8 less life. If you think about it this way, it's almost like you have to hit with 2 heralds gaining 4 life each time before you're at parity with your opponent. If you're just like, block 2 cards, play a herald, flip an angel, and then you just sack the angel every time, and you get 4 value out of every time. You are not getting 4 value out of the angel every time. It's not until the 3rd time we hit with a herald that we're actually gaining value over our opponent, because they just got to start the game like a reasonable human being at 40 life. So that's a lot of deficit to make up. The next big major thing is poppers. This deck is horrendous into popper matchups from my experience. There technically is counterplay to it. You know, you have Triumph, you have Parable, you have Figment of Triumph, you have that new instant Celestial Reprimand. It's frequently unreasonable for you to have all these things at the right time. You know, a lot of times your game plan is just going to be block 2 cards, throw a Herald in most matchups. So having a Parable there isn't reasonable. That's so many cards that you need to do that. So you just had to no blocks in the previous round. You get to do the Triumph thing with your Figment like once if you're playing Halo, where you can like flash that in. But if they block something too big, that doesn't work. And Celestial Reprimand is inconsistent, I found. Like, it's good sometimes, but honestly the value isn't that good on it. You're just trading a card here on the reprimand to not have to trade a card on your herald. You're spending a card to not get blown out, but then you're losing all the value in what made your play good because you just had to spend a full card to just not get blown out. I don't find that it's necessarily a great answer into the popper matchups. It can work, it's just, are you going to have one of those for every single attack you make for the entire game? That's kind of unreasonable. So now we're talking about playing like infinite copies of these cards, and now we're cluttering our deck with like infinite non-block cards, which brings us into one of the next weaknesses of the deck. So many non-block cards. A lot of the problems that the deck has are seemingly answered by non-block cards, but then the more you try to fix these problems with non-block cards, you're adding more problems to the deck. Surprise! With non-block cards. Your deck is just full of these now, and you just like can't play the game sometimes because your opponent swings at you and you're just like, take it, die, or take it and just like lose your round or something like that, or you're just like, I needed a block here and I just can't, or I can only block with one card and it's not good because that's the only card in my hand that blocks is the herald I want to play, so now I can't block because now I'm stuck with all these cards in hand that don't do anything if I don't have an attack. One of the other issues that this deck can run into that is solved by its non-blocks is an inability to use all of its cards, and two of these non-block cards solve that situation. Angelic Wrath and the other Angelic Descent. These help you weaponize all the cards in your hand, but again, more non-blocks. You sometimes run into a problem where if you throw a herald at your opponent, let's say we go back to that scenario, you know, we block, this is the common play pattern. We block with two cards, we play a herald. Our opponent looks at our herald, they go, you got nothing else backing that up, it's just a herald? I would like to not let you get a 2-card 11 or so. I'll block, and they just give you 3 cards on that. Then your opponent goes to their round, they only have 1 card, so they arsenal pass. Then it comes back to your round, and your opponent didn't attack you, so you didn't get a chance to block. And now you draw up, and your hand isn't great, and you really needed to block with a couple of these cards, because you need so many blues in the deck to do the play pattern the deck seemingly wants you to do. A lot of the cost curve of this deck is structured around 2 blues. You pitch a blue, you play a herald, you activate Numenaris, giving your herald go again, and then you play a second thing, either another herald or you swing the angel that you got. And that's a 6 resource round, so you really need a high blue count. Problem with a high blue count, a lot of these cards don't really do anything, and you really wanted to block because your hand didn't play with that many cards. So the angelic cards can kind of help solve that problem of, well, now I have all these extra cards, I can at least still weaponize these. I'll play my Wrath, giving me +4, pushing over their block value because my opponent just fridged their hand in front of me. Oh, I'll play my Descent, giving me a go again and making my angel bigger. But again, non-blocks. You know, we're adding more issues to the deck with the solutions that were provided to us. And I think these cards have value. It's just, you need to be aware of the weaknesses that you're adding to your deck with these cards. I really liked the blues of these for that reason. They kind of let me play like a modal style with them where I'm like, okay, if my opponent does X, Y, and Z, I'll play it. If they don't, I'll set it or I'll pitch it to play my next thing. Another big problem that I ran into with the deck, there's basically no counterplay to anti-damage prevention effects. It can put yourself in a situation where if your opponent plays these cards, your angel value is just null and void. It feels like you're starting with less life for no reason, because you can never get that value back off of your angels. They just have no text in the matchup other than pay 2, swing for 4, but then you have to keep a million cards. The deck really, really struggles into lots of small attacks, like Kadachi style or Ash Wings, anything like that your opponent's just like, here's a lot of little things. You just have like no counterplay into that basically. When you play an angel and your opponent just goes like 1 go again, you almost just have to sack the angel for 1 value. It's really tough. I feel like the deck really needed a card kind of like Wizard got with Singe, Some sort of like, I can spend a card to have this floating damage prevention effect, kind of like an Ultim hero ability, where you can go, okay, you did a lot of small attacks, here's a lot of small preventions. Like, prevent one from the next 3 attacks. Something like that. But that doesn't exist, so that's not really an answer that we have in the deck. That's just a weakness that we have to deal with. The problem is that a lot of these weaknesses, some of these have no counterplay to, and you just have to deal with this. And then the other ones are solved by non-blocks, adding more issues. I know I keep harping on that, but it's really a big issue. Not really sure what to do about a lot of this. So yeah, I did it. I figured Prism out. The answer is, she's not that great, at least right now, unless we're missing something. And I really hope we are. I really scratched my head after listening to Brian Gottlieb talk about her on Arsenal Pass recently. And during it, he kind of mentioned that, like, it's kind of silly of us to expect to have solved the deck in a week. Keep trying kind of comment. And he said it very confidently, and it just makes me scratch my head and go, what do you know that we don't? What do you guys see that we didn't? Because we really didn't get that many new cards in the deck, honestly. She got less cards in the set than any other hero in the set. The entire rare slot was taken up by reprinted heralds. While she got, was it like 8 different Majestics? It's a bunch of one-ofs, and you don't even probably play all of them in the deck. Card quantity-wise, she gained less in the set than anyone else. He also made comments about how they really didn't want to support the Spectra playstyle, where if you want to do that, you can go do that, but we're not going to aid you in that. Which, again, the way he said it makes it sound like they intended for her core game plan to revolve around the Angel game plan, not auras. And if that's the case, that's even more confusing, because then we have even less cards to work with as far as solving these problems. In my eye, the best thing I've worked with so far with her has been a hybrid aura game plan, kind of reminiscent to Monarch Prism almost, where you'd have these auras in the side for like your matchups like Bravo that you just couldn't play these in, the Heralds. Yeah, it's a head scratcher, because like, if the intended game plan that they want us to do is Numenar's Angels, unless we're missing something, it just seems like she has a very polarizing matchup spread into a lot of different decks. That doesn't seem great. The Herald game plan is very good into some decks, like aggro decks that just don't want to block you, and you just like win the turn cycle every time into them. That's very good. But then just like fucking unplayable into some other decks. Not to mention how punishable it can be by your opponent playing poppers or just blocking on rounds that they should block you on. I'd like to be proven wrong on this, honestly. Like, I want to play Prism. I now have a dilemma. Would I like to be happy and play 14 rounds of Prism at Nationals? Or would I like to play a deck that doesn't tank my elo? But how about you, dear viewer? Do you have any ideas to solve these problems? Surely if we get enough monkeys on typewriters, we can solve the deck. Enough eyes, we'll figure something out. But as of right now, I don't really know what to do about this. I feel like I'm bashing my head up against a wall here with this deck, where a lot of the problems don't seem solvable. I can't conceivably think of any way to solve Dromai, for example, without just like warping the deck by adding a million poppers to it. And even then, I don't even know if that's a winning plan, where it's the level of cursed matchup where it just might be worth sacking it and just accepting that you just can never beat one of the top 2 best decks in the format, which doesn't seem like a great place for a deck. I don't see the card pool solution to this type of matchup. I'm sorry that I don't have more of a positive take on this. I obviously want to play this deck, and again, I would like to be proven wrong. I do not like being so negative on a deck or a hero, especially one that I love so much. So the second that something gets figured out, you know that I'm going to be on the hype train for Prism, and I'm going to be all over that and just dumping every other deck that I own. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you did, please consider checking out my Patreon or clicking the join button on YouTube. It helps support content like this. I put a lot of work into this, and I am trying to slowly upgrade the things. As you can see, I got a green screen now, got a key light. I'm trying to make everything look better and be more presentable to you guys. And we're going to be having some fun with the green screen in the future. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Peace, YouTube.